the country's top legal minds will begin their arguments on South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. Now, with this case, the country says it hopes to force Israel to stop the ongoing killings of innocent Palestinians in Gaza. Well, let's get yet more analysis of what is likely to come out, but importantly as well, what the people here in South Africa expect to happen at that court. One of them is DA Member of Parliament, Ghaleb Cachalia, and he speaks to us now. Mr. Cachalia, thank you very much for your time. I think you, one of those people that, in my view, it would be fair to describe you as a casualty of advocating publicly very early on that what was being done by Israel in Gaza is genocide. How significant is this day for you, particularly given that it is led by South Africa?
I think it's an extremely important day. The South African government has compiled a very cogent case which they presented to the ICJ, and the ICJ reviewed this and determined that there was a prima facie case to answer. Now, in the next short while, that process is going to unfold, and that process is very important. Let me say that what they are looking at is essentially a definitional issue on the question of genocide. Now, the definitional issues are terribly complex, and they rely on a host of issues, intent being terribly important, very difficult to prove, but very easy if you actually look at the utterances of the Israeli top brass, as it were. Then there are what they're actually doing, how that impacts the population, whether it affects the population in a particular way, and what the consequences are going to be. That's definitional. For me, extraordinarily clear. The definition or no definition, there is an extraordinarily simple and ugly crime being committed at the moment in terms of the retaliation by Israel, utterly disproportionate and perhaps to be viewed very carefully under the looking glass, which is what the lawyers are going to do to see whether this actually constitutes genocide. But that is a moot point. The point, as the Reverend Chikane said, is that they are in the process of trying to mobilize people across the world, which has been happening, to say that this is untenable. And that is extraordinarily important.
Let me talk to you then about the very conversation you're making reference to, that which we have just had with Reverend Frank Chikane, who says, yes, whatever decision comes out of the ICJ, it may not be enforceable, but it imposes a moral obligation on Israel to stop what it's doing, but he also doesn't really think that the leadership in Israel will listen to their conscience, but for him it's going to be the world's force on Israel to say, if indeed the International Court of Justice says what you have been engaged in is a campaign of genocide in Gaza, you therefore have got to stop, or you are going to be isolated. Is that your sense as well, that the world pressure on Israel will force it ultimately to stop?
Who knows? Israel is extraordinarily determined. Israel is supported in large measure by the most powerful country in the world, and it will do what it wants to do. The pressure that is mounting across the globe. It's mounting in America itself. There are huge demonstrations. Cities have declared their commitment to stand by the Palestinians and against what Israel is currently doing. This is there is a movement across the world, in every single country, in Europe, in Asia, in the Americas. It is patently obvious, and all you need to do is log on to Google and text in Gaza, Palestine, and it will all come up. Whether this is sufficient to halt the Israelis in their stance is another question. Yes, the application may well go towards this and ensure that there is a focus, and in terms of the result, which we don't know what it will be, that the focus will be to say this is untenable. Now, as I said, it's a definitional issue, but the focus is on what is happening, and what is happening is untenable. If there was, for example, a focus now on what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, everybody, all experts are clear that would be clearly deemed as a crime and perhaps as genocide. Now, what will happen now, I don't know. But let me say this: these things, the United Nations has a responsibility, a preventative responsibility, and that responsibility has not been exercised, which is why we are where we are, because of the vetoes that have been placed in exercised by the powers that be.
Yeah.
Now, if you look back to Germany, Kristallnacht in itself was not genocide. Auschwitz was genocide. Between Kristallnacht and Auschwitz was a continuum of an evolving genocide. And that is perhaps what we need to be focusing on, and what is being focused on by the application, to say, is this the direction we're moving in, and what needs to be done to stem it? Because it is patently a crime against international law as we stand.
Ghaleb Cachalia, as we taper down our conversation, I don't think it would be an honest one without reflecting on exactly what I began with when I said you became a casualty because of your public views on what was taking place in Israel. You accepted your dismissal from the DA's shadow cabinet because the leader of the DA, John Steenhuisen, said your views were contrary to that of the party's position. Do you think that that decision to dismiss you over this, which is what the world is going to listen to today, do you think that that painted a DA to be a sympathizer of sorts with Israel? Where do you think the DA stands? What is the position of the DA on this?
The DA has made its position clear through a number of evolving statements over time, reacting to what happened since October the 7th. I made my position clear, abundantly clear, and consistently clear. The leader, as all leaders of any political party, are entitled and empowered to determine who they want to have in their shadow cabinet and what sanctions they will take against people whom they perceive to have crossed the line in terms of inner party rules or statements or opinions. And that I'm not going to comment on. That I've said. I will continue to do what I do, which is to carefully, logically, honorably speak truth to power. The DA has taken, in terms of its leadership, a particular view vis-à-vis me, and that, as I say, they're entitled to do. I am an ordinary MP now. I have a view. You've asked me about my view. I presented my view.
Are you able to share with us the DA's view? Do you know what it is?
Well, it's there. The DA has in the past called for humanitarian pauses. It has condemned the violence. It has called for a two-state solution. It has called for people to get around the table, and all of those things have been said. It has fallen short of calling for a ceasefire. And it has raised some questions about the hypocrisy, if you like, in terms of South Africa's motion before the courts. Now, my view on the hypocrisy is that I'm looking at the substantive issue here, and I'm not looking about anything else surrounding it. Is this what we're witnessing worthy of merit and worthy of consideration? The answer is yes. States have got ties, states have got trade interests, states have got all sorts of territorial and treaty interests. They will do what they will do. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. But in this particular instance, on this particular issue, I say, well, makes sense to me.
Mr. Cachalia, I'm ending the conversation, but one last stab at this. You come from a family whose standing in this society will always be remembered as one of those that fought against the very issues that the people of Palestine are crying about. Your stay in this party, do you think it is still justified? Your stay in the DA?
Well, I'm currently a member of the DA. I've issued a statement that I will be a member of the DA and sit on the back benches and continue to do what I started to do. That is where I find myself. With regard to your former statement about my family, it's not just my family. Yes, my family did what they did. But remember this. We have 3 Nobel Peace Laureates in this country. Bishop Tutu, Nelson Mandela, and Chief Albert Luthuli. And I think, in all honesty, if all 3 of them were sitting around the table now, instead of the likes of me and Reverend Shikane, who are lightweights with respect to Reverend, by comparison to Luthuli, Mandela, and Tutu, I think those 3 would be at Edom about the course of action that the government has taken.
Ghaleb Cachalia, let me thank you very much for your time, a DA member of Parliament.